So, starting with myself, so I'm excited. Coming into the Israelite nation, I was raised by my grandmother. So, mostly everything that I've learned was more my grandmother. But when I came into the Israelite nation, there are certain things that I find that I'm wondering. I remember my first question that I posed to the priest that was there was, why are you calling me an Israelite when I'm a Jamaican? Because that's all that I know. So where did this, I remember my grandmother, when the child was born, there were certain people who weren't allowed to come, family member, they weren't allowed to come to the home until the ninth day. And sometimes the children were named at that time. So certain grandparents had, I would say, a little bit more culture than the other. I would say, how many of us in here was raised by our grandparents? Could be an aunt, could be, well, mostly the women. It's really most of the women that was raised as I'm not sure who was even raised by their uncles or, their dad, but most of us there was a woman figure in our home. So who here was raised by grandparent, grandmother, or an aunt? Okay, I'm putting my hand up, I'm one. Anyone else in here that was raised? Elvis. And looking at everyone in here, this is the next generation. So the next generation, who raised you guys? Was it your mom? Your grandmother and your mom. So who was mom here? What are you? Your mom? And on this side?
My mother.
Your mother?
My parents.
And father.
Mother and father. But I think more of the cultural aspect. This is dependent because since being in the nation, I've heard a lot of people say it was also their dad. Most of sometimes the scriptures and the culture came from their dad. But when I came through the Israelite nation, it was really my grandmother. Certain things, wake up in the morning, do certain things when a baby's born. Certain things was being done, but how do I connect it? How do you connect it to say, well, this is what we're supposed to be doing? How do you unify a people when we're all from different backgrounds? We're Trinidadians, we're Bayesian, we're Jamaican. How do you unify our culture? What is it? Because we each have a different piece of it. How do you put it together and unify it, connect it to something? That's what I want to discuss today. Where does the connection come from? Because each of us in this room, we have a little bit of something, but we don't know how to connect it. So I would say my connection came in when I walked through the doors of Earl's Court. That's where my connection came into who's an Israelite and what pertains to us. What makes us as women stronger? What makes us as women able to teach, to raise princes and kings and queens? What is it? There has to be some secret ingredients because we can't all be raised the same way and come out with the same great substance. We have to be connected to a God. We really do. And if we're connected to a God, what is it that, whoever that God is, what does he want us to do? Because we're all in the same home now. So that's what I'm going to tackle. And thinking about it, I said, okay, everybody knows about Moses. Really and truly, you know about Moses, you know that he was taken in, by the Egyptian. Everyone knows about that. But I wanted to go before then. What was really their culture? Let's start with Genesis and let's start with Sarah. So that's where I want to start today because I think that's where we, as a people, that's where we began, is when the name change came. It's, okay, Sarah, you know what? You came from Ur of the Chaldee, but you're going to be, the name is going to be changed now to Sarah. So this is now how you're going to be raising this child that's going to be named on the 8th day and circumcised. This is what you need to do. So I'm going to start with that culture and how it came in. So if we take our Bible and we're going to go to Genesis chapter 17. And also you guys could comment as we go along because as we read some of these scriptures, there's so many things for our culture that's going to pop out at you. And that's what happened to me over the past week going into this. There was so many things that it just brought me back. Oh my gosh, I remember this. Oh my gosh, I remember this. Or oh my gosh, I didn't see this before. So Genesis chapter 17, we're going to go from 19 to 22. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he begat, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. And as he left off talking with him, and God went up from Abraham. So again, we see where it started. And it started again with Abraham and Sarah. And this is our culture now was born from. Ishmael was already there. A lot of us believe that, okay, Ishmael was part of the covenant, but he was already there. When God appeared unto Abraham, Ishmael was already born. So he could not have been the seed that the God of Israel was speaking about. And his name shall be Isaac. I mean, Ishmael was already named. So for again, as Israelite women, we're going to see how Sarah now, when this boy, go ahead.
So can I interrupt? So you're saying that God spoke to Abram, changed his name to Abraham, and he already had Ishmael.
Yep.
But as a mother in a household, I can't imagine having two children that I would raise one differently versus the other. Like, did Ishmael share in the culture of Isaac and Abraham and Sarah?
They did. He did, but it was
And
a
that's
little
to
bit.
everybody. I don't know.
Yeah, he did, but that's a little bit different, and that's what we're going to get into, because you have touched on something that is so important. Is Ishmael was already there, so he was being raised a certain way. He really was. If you have children before and then you came into the nation, you are being raised a certain way. So now what is going to be the difference? How are you going to get into the nation and say, oh, everything I've been doing was correct, so now I have a child in the Israelite nation. Do you raise the child differently? Does the child start out differently? The child would. So we're going to go more into depth into Sarah and also Ishmael. So we're going to go right now to, stay in Genesis, we're going to go to chapter 21, and we're going to read 1 to 4. Okay, maybe I should go there. Okay, and the Lord visited Sarah as he had said. And the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, and as God has commanded him. So he was told, on the 8th day, this child should be circumcised. So when we look at this time, Ishmael was also already 13. So he couldn't have been circumcised on the 8th day after the name change. It was really Sarah. It was really Sarah, and it was really Isaac. And now you see the culture is now starting to come in. As we as Israelites, back home, 9 days. Where did the 9 days come from? Again, it's watered down. And that's what it is. It's very watered down back home. So now that, and I would say it starts through the Israelite nation. It really did. Because before, we wouldn't have known any of this.
I think you really touched on a really fundamental point. Throughout life, some of us may have heard that, when you have a child, they don't come with a handbook. Well, it just seems like this might be a handbook that we're looking for, wouldn't you say? This is the handbook. I mean, it comes with very definitive instructions. It's very precise, and it's written here. And as Sophie said, there's many cultures within the West Indies especially that actually did this, and without realizing what they were doing. I mean, they were keeping the child indoors for 9 days,
9 days.
right? And nobody would see them. And this is something that we do. But where they got the 9 from, I don't know. But it's starting from here. So that's really, really quite an interesting point. This is the handbook that you need for your children.
And again, go ahead.
I think that is the Bible, like the older generation get it from, why they know that they should do it. They didn't just come up with it like that.
But they didn't just come up with it. It had
Exactly.
to come from somewhere.
Right.
It's something that they have been practicing. But they don't know that. They don't know that this is... Have you ever heard, has anybody heard their parents or grandparents say that, we circumcise our children because it says so in the scriptures?
No, never. Even I came here.
Right. So you kind of wonder, it's like, okay, so where is this coming from? Sorry, there was a hand up.
Elder
at the
Val?
back.
I remember growing up, and my mother, when she was down at beach, I was listening to the whole parenting and all that. And it's so weird that you guys are talking about this, because it is a part of our culture just the same way. But as you said, because we lost it somewhere along the line, right? Because my mom used to tell us that that's what They used to do even with us. My mom said that when she had us, as soon as they go from the hospital, they go. I didn't remember how long they stayed in the house with us before anybody could really come in and see us as a baby. And the reason why they did that is because it's to protect us
Yes.
from evil spirit. And what they would do, they would put a Bible at our head.
Yes.
And sometimes they would put a little red thing around our wrist.
Red or blue.
Or blue, yes.
Or,
Something.
yeah.
Yes, you know what I mean? So I used to say, so what's the meaning of that? But as she said, it was just to protect from evil, you know what I mean? But there was more to that.
There is obviously a lot more to it.
Yeah, but you see, because, they start losing their way, you know what I mean, until they lost their way, and we know as a next generation will come and we don't do it because it wasn't being practiced.
Right.
You know?
And there's no true understanding as to why you do it. So nobody can really explain, okay, you should be doing this because, according to the instructions of our forefathers, this is what we did. So nobody's there to direct them.
Yeah.
So
Even me, and even now, I would still talk to my daughters about these things, and I said, that's why it's important to be at Israelite Nation, because you learn so much, because it's a part of our culture, and it's important, that whenever time you guys start having children, you do these things, you make sure you protect them and all those things,
absolutely. And we had another question here.
Wait, just before, I think one of the key things you said, Elder Val, out of that is, we didn't know why we did it, but we did it.
We did it.
And I think a good point there is we were obedient in doing it, not knowing why, we just did it. It was instructed by my parents to do it, so I just did it. And then when you do make the connection to the scriptures, you're like, wow, well, this was actually instructed by the God of Israel. Our culture, our very culture, the beginnings of it was set from the very beginning of the patriarchs, from Abraham, our founding father. It's for him to give us the culture of offering up this child. And then there is a breakdown, but the obedience is, like, to me, even of utmost importance. Because once you get to know the why, then it just makes it also all more, I don't know, more whole, more validated, more valuable, and more important to you. So sometimes you may not always know why right away, but when you come into that knowledge, it just makes it even such an epiphany, more enlightening to your life. And then you recognize the importance of it, and then why that's, you need to pass it down to the next generation. And then you can give the why with it,
And I think also it makes you relevant. I think for us, and I use myself a lot, because when I came into the nation, even now, it starts with Elder Shadrach. Just the same way it started here with Abraham. It had to be given to someone, and somebody has to carry it out. It didn't just come to us as women. It really didn't, because if Abraham is taking it back to Sarah, she's not there when this is happening. She's not there with the conversation. She could have been one of those women to say, you know what? You're stupid. You know what I mean? Where are you coming with this I already know what I'm supposed to be doing, because she's had a child. There's a child already in the home. So what are you telling me all this now? But it's the spirituality, and you have to have a connection. You have to have a connection, not just to your God, but also to your husband. You have to be a one accord there. There really has to be, because this wouldn't have been taking place. And I think that's what some of us miss here as Israelite women. It doesn't matter if it's the male and the females in the home. We already know the man is the ruler. But if the man is not doing his job, as women, we take on the role. That's something we have to know. But here, you see, the role is not broken down. He's doing what he's supposed to do. You know what? This is what has to take place in my home. When this child is born, this is what you have to do. No talk. Because as women, black women, we have a lot of this. We do have a lot of this, and then the culture and the spirituality goes a different direction. But again, it has to come from someone, and we raise our children because, again, it came from Elder Shadrach, and Elder Shadrach, when we came in, our firstborn is sitting here in the room, and that is Jacob, and Tammy, she was the first one that Elder taught about offering up the child and circumcising the child and the weaning feast, but where did it come from? I know Cheryl had her hand up, so what were you going to say?
I was going to say that I wasn't raised with my grandmother, but my mother had a lot of this in her. She too was under the 90, but back then she also stressed the fact that babies were different. They didn't open their eyes for another 5 or 6 or 7 days. And this is after being born. So when they do open their eyes, and I'm not sure, but I'm thinking that that's where this 9-day came from. And even in Trinidad, where the sun is hot all day, you have to have your head covered. You can't just go outside. Your pores are open. Don't go outside.
Yep.
That is so,
Yep, so true.
That is so. I've seen today so many women. It's, unfortunately, some of the women that are here, you will tell them, you got to cover your baby's head.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how hot it is. You have to cover their crown. You have to. Their nose. You've got to protect. But this is all part of the culture, part of what actually defines us and what identifies us as who we are. Because it's these little things, the little things, that make such a big difference. And these are the little things that we take for granted because it's too hot outside.
Can I ask a question? Can you explain to me how Ishmael did raise like Isaac? Because at that time, the God of Israel didn't appear to Abraham.
No.
So how do you know that Ishmael didn't raise?
But that's what I'm saying. It has to be a different culture. He was in the home with them, so he was being raised. It's like you have your children right now. We weren't just born in the Israelite nation to hear this knowledge is truth. So you were raising. He was being raised. He was at an older age. So you have to see how the separation came in, because even if
Well, it's
we're
like,
reading,
today, if you have, in today's society, you may not have the nucleus family as the father, mother, and their children. It's very blended and mixed, right? So if you're as a mother, other children come in, you would raise that household, everyone gets one slice of bread. Unless you like this one more than the other. But no, that's a different thing. But with Ishmael, he was raised, even in Genesis 17, he was also circumcised with the culture.
At
He
13.
had circumcision, the whole house and their servants.
But I think the really unique thing about that is you see the separation of culture because it drags itself to today, whereby you will find cultures such as the Muslims or some Arab cultures, they actually circumcise at 13, following from that tradition. And this is when their child becomes of age. So you see that therein lies the separation. They grew up in the same house, but he continued one tradition, whereas Isaac continued another.
and to confirm that point, it's when God appeared unto Abraham, he gave him, this is what you're supposed to do when this child is born. This is what has to happen. Not just happen to this child, but from this time forward, your home will be different. Every man-child in your home has to be circumcised. So I'm telling you, before this, that's what we have to understand. Before this, they were all not circumcised. They were living, they were doing their own culture. It's the separation now has to come in to say, you know what? There's great substances going to be coming, out of this set of people. So they have to be different.
And that came about because, they lived all the same way, but he went away, right? He escaped Hagar took her son and they went away into the wilderness and he became his own nation elsewhere. So talking about the separation that you're touching on, they developed their own culture. His mother was Egyptian, so they had their own culture. But while he was in the roof and while he dwelt with Abraham and Sarah, he was living in the culture of that household.
And I believe that he wouldn't have been blessed if Abraham didn't.
That's an interesting,
Because he has no business position. But because
Abraham was his father,
that's the only reason I believe that he got what he got.
But it's so true what
because
you're
he
saying.
agonized over him,
Yes.
right? It wasn't just like, can you please say, it was an agony. It was his firstborn,
It's
it was
true.
his son, they've been waiting.
And plus it's also, you got to see also how the woman plays her role in that house. It's, as we're seeing it, we're sitting in this room and we're saying, hey, there has to be a separation because Ishmael was already there and then you have Isaac that's going to be born. Can these two really live in the same home? Because it's really two different cultures. So now we're going to see the wisdom later on too of how Sarah came into place to say in regards to this child, you know what? As parents today, as mothers today, we have to start looking and see what makes us different from the outside world. How do we separate our children? How do we make them stronger? It starts with us. And this is something that Sarah saw, that she said, you know what? This child can't be in the same home as this child because they are different. Certain things I'm sure she was seeing as the two grew up. That's what I'm saying. They were in the same home. So I'm sure they lived as brothers. But it's the mothers. There's something in there to say, you know what? I'm seeing certain things and it cannot happen. So we're going to go more into, now we've discussed the circumcision and we see where it came from, and this is how our culture started. It really is how we came to be. How do we connect the dot in the Israelite nation to make us say, we are Israelites today? Where did it come from? And this didn't just fall into our hands. And even going through this, I'm thinking in my head, thank you to the God of Israel for the Israelite nation, truly, because it makes me who I am today. It makes me who I am today. With the children, I'm seeing all the children in the room. Wow. Thank you all. We are doing a great job because their name is different. They're being raised different. They're being looked at different. And this is something, as the children, they got to take outside. We have to do our jobs within the home, but the children also has to take something out because they came from kings. We have to make sure that they know that they came from kings. When we came in, we were given the tools, and the tools are circumcise them. They got to be weaned. Separate the name. It has to be 14 days for the girls and 8 days for the boys. But sometimes we don't do these things because we go into our own thoughts and our own ways. No, stick to the scriptures. This is what makes us strong people. This is what makes us, the women in the nation, great. This is what keeps you connected, because if you're not connected to all these things that you're supposed to do, it's easy for you to look the other way because it means nothing.
It's even just so essential that it's the whole family. It's not just, oh, you can do it or you can do this. It's the whole family that partakes in this. You know, we speak, and you know, this is about women, but you're looking, this is coming from Abraham. You know, if Abraham didn't have that connection with Sarah, then this would not take place. So it's the whole family that's partaking in this. You know, one understanding, one bond.
And even if you go to Genesis, I know I've seen other hands, but then he went down quickly, so I wasn't
Don't be
sure if they
shy.
were still continue. We're all, oh, there you go.
Okay, there's something I remember back home when I see some of the mothers with their young babies. I noticed they have this 3-month thing too. Like after the baby's born, 3 months, only the close relative can gain access of viewing the child. And usually when they're walking with the child in the bassinet is completely covered. If they go to the doctor is probably the only excluded person that can look at the child just for medical reason. But outside of that, after 3 months, I noticed then they come out with the baby and the whole community can see the baby. You know, stuff like that I've seen and remember.
It's true. There's so many things we do, and just sitting here as Israelite women, you know, I'm grateful. I'm truly thankful, because how come this didn't come to us when we were outside? Like, really, how come we didn't get this? It was there. We go to church. Christianity has always been there. Why weren't we taught these things? Because they believe this is their book. They believe they read these things, but how come we weren't taught how to raise our children? How come that was omitted? But now, in today's time, and it's more the women, we are the ones to say, well, I don't really believe in Christmas, but it's for the children. Let's do it for the children.
That's what I was saying earlier. I mean, you're going to take a situation, you do this and I'll do something different. It doesn't work. It won't work. It won't stand. A house divided will fall. Everybody in the house has to have one mind.
I say take your role seriously. Were you going to say something? Or you're good? Oh, no. I just say take your role seriously. I think this, when you know who you are as an Israelite woman, it makes you strong. It really does make you stand tall. It really makes you like, oh, you're circumcised? Oh, well, you know what? You do you. I'm going to be doing me, because you know what? It has to be the God of Israel, and you have to be connected to that source. You really do. God of Israel, and that spirituality, the connection next goes to the mother. And from the mother, it goes to the child. When we came in, we have always heard, teach a child from the womb. Teach a child from the womb. Why were we raised with the Bibles there? Because I do remember there's a Bible always in a black parent's home. There's a Bible in the crib.
So I just want to understand, you know, there's a lot of people here, and how many of you know at what point in time you circumcise your child, your son?
Or did you even believe in circumcision? I knew what it was.
But does everybody understand now that it's the 8th day that we circumcise the male child, right?
And why?
And you understand why, right? Because it's very important. We want to make sure that we're having this dialogue, that we come away with fruit, something fruitful. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is what we do. As Israelites, we circumcise our male children when they are 8 days old. They are offered up, they are named, and they are circumcised. This is the law. This is the traditions of our forefathers. This is what we do.
And that's, yeah. And that's how the separation comes in. I mean, even when you come into the nation, we know the covenant is there, and we always have to go back to the covenant, the instructions we were given.
And you know, I'm sorry, just to interrupt. It's good that you brought up the point of circumcision and separation, because riddled throughout the scriptures, you brought up Christianity.
Yep.
And throughout the scriptures, you see all the time that the Israelites were known as the children of the circumcision.
There you go.
That's right.
And everywhere they went, they were known as children of the uncircumcised lips or circumcision of the heart. Like, they were known as the children of the circumcision. It was a very key point and key fact in history.
Does anyone know what we do for our girls? And when? Come on, got some experts here.
We want
The
details.
boys have their
We want
instructions, so the
details.
girls have their own instructions from the God of Israel.
No, but we have mothers here, I know that, so please.
14 days. What do we
Very
do on the
good.
14th day? Name them and offer them up to the God of Israel.
Very good. We do not circumcise our girls. Yeah, I just want to make that very, very clear. You know, it's great, circumcision is a great thing, but yeah, not for the girls. Okay?
Right, not for the girls. Okay, so,
So,
I just wanted to say, I remember with Jose, I remember we were on vacation at the time, and my brother-in-law was holding me, drinking alcohol, and so I'm standing there watching him because I know how it goes, right? And when he finished, there was ice in the glass, and he put it to Jose's mouth. Jose was 2 at this time. So I said, whoa, 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 like stopped him. He said, no, I'm not killing him. Because he wants to just suck the rum cream off of the ice cube, which is not going to drug him.
True.
Right? But I said, he can't have that. And I didn't go any further because you're not going to understand the why. He can't have that. End of discussion, right? But then I'm thinking about what Sophie said with the instruction from her husband.
yes,
So she has a son who, he was 13 at this time, her eldest son.
yes.
And now you're being told something completely different. But if you go back to Genesis 17, the God of Israel he said he's going to bless Ishmael, he's going to be fruitful,
Yes,
he'll multiply. So he has a whole line of blessings coming,
right,
although his culture so far was completely different, right?
Right.
Like he was raised.
Once the separation took place.
Right. But then going back to what Sophie said with, what if she said this is silly? I've already raised him, he's 13, I know what I'm doing.
There you go.
Right? Look at, so what would have happened eventually, if, let's say she didn't follow the instructions. That son would have been blessed and she could have said, I told you I know what I'm doing. You know, you get what I'm
Exactly.
saying? And that's what we do sometimes, we think we
Right.
know better, we think, so I raised him. Look at Ishmael, look what he's blessed. But that was already part of his future, part of his blessing. He was going to have all that regardless of what she did with Ishmael. But who would have suffered? Well, all of us would have suffered, but I mean, things would have changed. And it would have been because she just felt like she already knew and wasn't open to that new. You know what I mean? So I'm just
Right.
saying, you know better and you do better. You don't know what the alternative is and in the big picture, how that one ripple can change the entire world. It's when you read it, that's what jumped out at me that,
yeah.
my gosh. It's
Right.
that
That's a really
serious.
good point.
and we gotta understand that this is where the starting point of the great kings and queens. This is the starting point. This is how they were all raised, because remember, we're still not in Exodus yet. We're still not going through the Red Sea yet. We're still in Egypt. So this is our culture. So when we were in bondage and we were called the children were Hebrew, that was how they referred to us. It wasn't the children of Israel, because we weren't given the name to call our God yet, but we were known. So when we were in Egypt and were enslaved, this is how we were being raised. Not like the Egyptian. This is how we were being raised by our mothers. some mothers, some grandparents, aunties, whoever. There was a strong male in the home. And I think when
It's
slavery,
literally a nation within a nation.
there you go. And when slavery came around, even now, what slavery has done, it has removed our men. That's what it's done. It's removed our men. So again, this is why when we're being raised now, we're being raised by our grandparents. Because our men is gone. Back in the days, our men was there, and that spirituality was there to say, oh my gosh, come back, this is how you're supposed to be raised. They were the ruler of the home. Whatever they said, go, but then the women now have to become that. We take on that role because we couldn't be connected anymore. Because once we be connected to a man, slavery, they take them, they sell them. You can't even be connected to your children. So forget about the circumcision. It's only behind the scenes you'll find the little bit of the culture. Because Christianity came in and wiped us out.
Yeah, I would have a thought I'm going to throw at you guys. In our culture, the women is what shed confidence and power to the young man, not only the young man, but to their daughters as well.
Yes.
And during slavery, in order for them to break down our society, is to punish the man in front of the woman. And that way, they can weaken the strength of that society. The slave master will punish the man in front of the woman to gain control over everybody.
Right.
And that's what it is back then.
What you're saying is just so loaded. It goes so far beyond what you're saying. It's like a loaded gun. When you speak about the state of the man during the time of slavery, we know that they have been emasculated. They have been brought down so low to the point where they themselves, you don't have to tell them you're worthless. They become worthless. You know, they act it, they carry it out. And even today, unfortunately, this is what we see. You know, we see men who they don't want to take responsibilities, they don't want to, you know, I don't really want to make this like a man bashing session or, you know, this is not what we're looking at. We're looking at how to we don't want these boys to get to that point. We want to break that cycle right now. We want to make sure that they understand that they have the blood and the genes of princes and kings and rulers and leaders and judges. We want them to understand that. We want our young women to understand that they are jewels, that they are precious stones, that they are worth so much more than that they can even imagine. And they have to invest in themselves. But parents, mothers, we have to help them, nurture them through this stage.
Amen. And you know, the first place that I heard about weaning was the Israelite nation. Have anyone heard about weaning?
Very true.
Never heard of it until I came into the Israelite nation about weaning a child. So you've heard of, how many of you have heard of weaning a child? Elder Val has heard of it. Right, but I have never heard of weaning. So when I heard it in the Israelite nation, honestly, weaning, I didn't even think it was something to do with children. I didn't think it was anything to do with children. And then, when you read it, oh, really, there is a separation time. Because you think the time in the womb, the 9 months, is a time between the mother and the child. But no, there's a time when you say, okay, God of Israel, it's your turn. Like, you take the child now. You know, God of Israel, it's your turn. I do what I need to do. So you got to understand that everything, you have to follow the order that you're given. Circumcise him, wean him, do all these things. You have to follow it, because if you don't follow it, what is the next step? Moses was known as the great deliverer. Because why? Because his mother saw something was different in him. And at 3 months, again, it's a separation time. At 3 months, she put him in the water. And still he was, even when the Egyptian women found him there, hey, he was given back to the Hebrews to raise. He was given back. They couldn't raise him. Something was different in him. Go back to your home. And when he was raised enough age, you could even say there's a weaning period. Then he was taken back. Somebody has to raise him. Imagine what went into him. Because he's going to be the one to deliver the people. Know your role as women. Know the children that you are raising, born in the nation and not born. Because when you come in, you separated them. You said, you know what, you came in at 10, but don't worry, you're going to be circumcised at 10. To this day, the Muslims circumcise their children at 13.
Yeah.
How are they part of the covenant? To this day, 13 years old, they're circumcised. To this day, the Israelite nation circumcised their children at 8 years old. This is who we are. This is what makes us strong. 8 days old, sorry, 8 days old. This is what makes us strong. And we pray and hope that what we're doing as women would bring forth great substance in our children. Because the time that we're living in is really hard. Really, really hard. So we could go into weaning and just see what it is after I'm sure net. What weaning is.
Oh, while you're talking about weaning, because I was gonna say there was another thing I noticed that they used to do, deliver the baby in the house.
Right.
As well, the baby was delivered in the house and kept in the house. And even the people in the house, if you're not in the room with the baby when the baby's being delivered, you don't get to see the baby until a certain amount of days. I couldn't tell you how many days it was, but I was only 7 when I first experienced the baby being born in the house. And it was the nurse that delivered the baby.
And that's such an important point, because we understand that within our culture, we're a spiritual people. Seriously, we are a spiritual people. And so we really have to take care that our environment is conducive to the right spirit. And that goes for when our children are born, we want to make sure that they are protected. Unfortunately, today we go to the hospitals. I mean, right now, I think things are changing whereby there are doulas and, people are able to have their children at home. But right now, we have to go to the hospital, and we need to make sure
That's the thing, how do you preserve the culture, right?
Right.
When the time evolves, how do you preserve that culture?
That's it.
It is up to the one with all the laws and all the customs passed down. It is up to the woman, especially with children, to pass that down orally.
Exactly.
And to find ways, if you have to go to the hospital, okay,
what do you do? Right.
You know?
So you want to make this
Exactly.
an Israelite environment. You want to make
You
this
tell the doctor.
right.
You're not
Exactly.
Israelite.
Yeah. Or you need to
Raise a nation of
there's
doctors.
brethren that are
It's
of
true.
your people. You want your own brethren in that room.
In that room
You
with
want to
you.
make that, when they're singing in their heads and people are praying, you're creating that
Yes.
environment for the right things to take place.
And that goes again back to separation.
Exactly.
Separating yourself.
Lorna.
First of all, I love race. I
Yay.
say I love it. I could talk about this and listen to this stuff forever. I wouldn't be lying. But it's really interesting because realistically, it might sound silly what I'm going to say, but I'm just being realistic. If you take a young child, put them in a room, and give them food and water, breakfast, lunch, dinner, healthy breakfast, lunch, and dinner, water to drink, 20 minutes of sunlight a day. You go back in 21 years, you'll have a 21-year-old person in there. He's just aged. But the raising of the child, that's a whole nother show, because it's not just about a child growing, it's raising, which is, that word contains so much. And what goes into raising? What do you do? What do you not do? The Bible tells us everything. It tells us how we're supposed to live. Like in Genesis, we don't get all of the instructions to raising a child. The whole book gives us the instructions, because there's things in here that apply to adults, but they also apply to children, right? And it won't say, well, teach the child this, teach the child that. It's the other half of it, the other half of the physical parts that you're referring to, like the circumcision and where you have the baby. I mean, that's definitely important. And then the other half is what you don't physically
But that's the
do
part
with
of
the words
Yes.
and the experience.
Yes.
But this is what,
You know?
yeah.
Yeah, this is the part of what you were touching about raising kings and queens. You have the scriptures. You can sit with your child and educate your child.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be so formal during the dinner table, during bedtime stories. It's really encouraging and empowering your child to let them know you are from this long lineage. You're not just from this diary or like it's just a story. This is your family. This is your culture. This is your people. In Acts, when Stephen talks about Abraham, he doesn't say it like, oh, from a long time ago in ancient days. He says it like he knew him.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that's the connection. That's how close you are, and that's why the mother is so important in this process of raising the child, because you're the one with them, with children in all hours of the day, and talking to them and nurturing them. And it is so vitally important that the words you put in and the thoughts and your actions, even so much more than your words sometimes, are that are obedient to the God of Israel, obedient to the family structure. You know, and it's a very in the 2016, life teaches you about being individual, right? We talked about the slave master breaking down the man in front of the family, not even just his wife or the woman, but in front of the entire village or the family, you know, to instill fear, right? And it's our duty to say, hey, that's not how our family was supposed to be ever. We lived amongst each other. We lived as a family, yes, but tribal and amongst each other. We were always an extended community, an extended village. We say it takes a village to raise a child. I would say, hey, it takes a nation to raise a child, especially in today's day, right? But it is so vitally important for 2016 for us, aunties, mothers and sisters, to really speak to any of our youth and say, hey, you're not supposed to do that, or hey, pull up your pants. But today's world, it's like you can't even slap. I think Elder Michael and I have this running joke. If I can't slap your child, then we're not really family. If you are offended that I slap your child, then are we really family? You know, that really means a lot. I hear about the elders talking all the time. If a child walked past his neighbor's house, you couldn't walk by and say, hello, Mr. Davis, or, you know, so-and-so. And the neighbor would beat your child.
Yes, yes.
You know, that doesn't happen today.
I got some
So
mixed
that's what the women, we really need to restore that.
It's true.
Those customs back into our community.
We do.
There's no errors in this book. There's no errors. It's us that always creates the breaches and the faults and the errors and the sins. It's up to us to restore it. You know, rebuild the nation and restore who we are as a people. It really starts with us.
Sorry, the part B, Sophie, when you were talking about in Jamaica, how the new mother can stay home with the child, nobody sees her, no one sees the baby. In 2016, because there's no community there, that mother has to get up to go to the grocery store, she has to come back and cook, she has to go here, because the community is missing, right? So that's why everything is linked and really has to go back, because we can't operate on our own, it doesn't work.
It's so true. Because when we came in, when it was, it's funny I'm thinking about these things because now in 2016, I think sometimes when you say this to the brethren, it's like, oh, you guys, really? Sometimes we do our own thing. But I remember coming in, oh my gosh, elder, for us to even leave the house, we had to knock, leave the food and run. You can't peek in, you can't even step the front door. It was so different. Elder used to 3 months. Don't see anything for 3 months. Don't announce. But it's all it's your culture. It's all from back home. So how come we weren't taught this? I mean, if you look at even Jesus himself, who this world believes, I mean, it's his birthday around now. Everything pertains to him, but he was circumcised. He was weaned. I mean, it doesn't say Sarah, Hannah, do all these things. Go wean the child, but some of it is culture. Everything doesn't have to be written down. It's wisdom.
Right.
It's wisdom. When you look at the weaning, did you get the instruction, wean at this? No, but it's the wisdom, because even with Hannah, her husband said, okay, you know, you could take the child. No. I'm not taking the child to the temple. I'm going to wean the child first, and I'll tell you when I'm taking the child to the temple. Because it's that separation. It has to be disconnected a bit from the mother. It's not that the mother is hands off, but the mother, no, now you could be raised differently. Now there's things that somebody else will be telling you about, will be teaching you about, but her time, she has to have her time.
And that again goes back to the women, what you're saying, okay, now in 2016, the woman, she leaves the child, she has to go to the grocery store, right? It's no different from when Sarah said to Abraham, you know, you're supposed to have a child.
Yep.
What did she do? She went into strategy mode. Okay, I'm going to calculate something. Not to say that it was wrong or right. The point is, she went into a strategy mode and she said, okay, take my handmaid
Yep.
and go in unto her and have a child. Because she knew the plan was that he had to have a child, right? So with that child, the new mother going to the grocery store, she's got to have a plan. She's got to have a strategy to say, okay, I need to go to the grocery store. Maybe I'll call my sister or a relative or somebody to go to the grocery store for me. But we have always strategized throughout, and God of Israel strategized with women. You know, he spoke to Rachel and says, you have 2 manners of different nations within thy womb. He didn't give her the details of how you should make the blessing happen.
Right.
You know, she just knew
Exactly.
the elder would serve the younger.
Right.
And she went into plan mode when the time came. So throughout our history, we were always strategizing as women. We strategize and we calculate things. When our men are being emasculated, we have to go into the mode of, if we wear both hats, okay, how do we empower the entire family unit?
Exactly.
Because it is supposed to be a respect between man and woman. There is no, like one above. It's a respect thing between each other. But we
Exactly.
always just go into gears of, okay, we need to survive, we need to eat. How can I plan? How can I strategize to make this happen?
Right.
No, absolutely. I think you touch on some really good points. And, you know, saying the instructions are not there one by one, the fact is it's here. This is a book that has knowledge. And it is up to us to decipher it, to find that wisdom. I mean, you look at the time when Moses was born, or was being born. During that time, it was the midwives. It was the Hebrew midwives that were with the mothers that were giving birth. So they can actually decide, or they knew what they had to do. They knew their role, but they were in the right place at the right time. So you're always going to want to follow, you're going to want to follow something like this. Today, you want to make sure that there is a woman of the God of Israel, there's an Israelite woman in that room when you are giving birth. Doesn't matter who else is there, she's got to be there. Someone's got to be there to help prepare that environment. And this is just taking it from Genesis here. Exodus. Exodus.
Go ahead,
Just
Sharon.
going back to planning and strategizing, what do you guys think women, what types of tools do we utilize to get our agenda ahead? Cheryl?
So I'm just gonna go back to what Officer Sherman was saying. So how do I put this?
What's the process?
Yeah. Just say it. Just say it.
Okay, so when you talk about, sorry, you just struck a nerve with me. When you talk about, the midwives and being there, quite a few of us have become doulas. And even though I'll never talk about this again, I'm gonna say it. We have attained or acquired a certain skill. And we believe that because we've acquired that skill, we try to now bring that back home.
Okay.
So by bringing it back home, we believe that, I won't say we believe, I'm gonna say I believe that, not yet, but if my niece Michelle is having a child, I believe that I possess those skills as a doula, and I have that plus sign because I'm also an Israelite. That I should be that person that you say, it's not a sister, it's not a friend, it's not an auntie, it's not an uncle, it's not because we have been prepared and have that skill to be there. To make sure that, we're not medical, but we want to be in the best position to make sure that you have the best delivery, that you have the safest delivery within our power, by doing the things that we do and getting you to that point. But sometimes, as in everything, you have people that push back.
Okay. So I'll just stop you right there, because this is the reason why we are doing what we're doing today.
Exactly.
Because I think somewhere along the line, these things got lost. The importance, the significance of these things have gotten lost. When I was expecting, Elder was the first one who said to me, "Who's going with you?"
Yeah.
I was like, "What do you mean, my husband?"
Yeah.
No, which brethren's going
Yep.
with you? It's like,
Be
oh,
careful,
okay.
any husband.
Okay, yeah, it's got nothing. Somebody had to be there, somebody had to, and I'm not even thinking. But then there were people there. There were people there for me. But it was that important. I did not realize it was that important. Today, it's like, if I had known, I would have chosen, oh my God.
I think that I hear
But
what
you
you're
don't
saying about
know.
the resistance. It goes back to each and every one of us understanding the importance of the spirituality
Right.
aspect
Right.
of it. Because that forward thinking, that's what we need, and that's what you're doing. You are restoring that and bringing it back to the nation. So it's up to us to be open and receptive to it.
Right.
And we can only be open and receptive to it if we truly understand who we are as Israelites and how important our spirituality is.
I've been given the argument that because I'm just coming from one side. But I've been given the argument that just maybe sometimes people feel more comfortable with whoever they want to choose. But I always say that I don't think you should have a choice when you have people with the skills. You have that plus.
Right.
But that goes back to the same point. It's understanding.
It
Your
is,
child
it
is
is.
not just your child. This child belongs to the nation. This child is part of this nation. This child is going to be named by everybody here. This child, you want the best start for your child. The very, very best start in life for your child. So this is the understanding. When we come here today, is to make sure that everybody understands. You need to make sure that if you ever find yourself in that position, that it's in your best interest, it's in your child's best interest to have somebody who understands what they're doing, somebody who's an Israelite who understands what they're doing. It is in your best interest. Now, everything else is gravy, but it's in your best interest to have the experts. We are building expertise here. We have so many experts here. Utilize them. It's to our advantage. Why do we build them and then use something else? You have gold. Use your gold. This is the time, not plastic. So
Hear them, the presentation.
you prepare them. There are so many things that comes when a child comes into this world. They need to be protected. They need to be secured. The environment, as we said earlier, needs to be prepared. This is what we're doing. This is exactly what we're doing. A child is a gift, a wonderful gift, a blessing to our women. This is how we see our children. They are a gift. And so we have to start looking at them as such.
I think it's also, we gotta look at, are we gonna be women of wisdom? Are we gonna be wise women? Because I think in the nation, sometimes we put that aside and we go with our own understanding. We're not really putting our mind on, okay, this is the steps, this is everything that was given to us to raise these children. It's there. It really is not about, because you're closer to me, no. Because when you're in that hospital room, and I must say, because I was there and someone else was there with me, I see nothing. So I want someone in that room that knows exactly what they're supposed to be in that room. And I'm always telling Cheryl them, I said, wow, I believe it's a blessing for the Israelite nation to have doulas. I truly believe that, because being in the hospital room, because I have been there a couple of times and I'm not the one I'm the support system in the room. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, I could go down any second. You really do need, it's not just looking and saying, okay, did the child come out this way? Did the child have, anything? No. You need a woman of strength in that room when you're in delivery, when you're giving birth. It's not just about, okay, is the child in one piece, all the 10 fingers and toes? No. Because the woman is the one that also look and say, this child is different. Like if you watch that movie, The Rebirth or whatever of a Nation, it's the mother that seen something that was different in the child. It was Moses' mother that seen something was different in the child. Not all children are the same.
I think another point too, like you're saying, when you're in the room, is what if things go awry, right? Giving birth is a life-threatening experience, and if you have someone other than someone who understands you as an Israelite, are they going to be able to pray with you? Are they going to be able to sing songs? I mean, I know a brethren that experience exactly happened to her, and lucky for her, there was a brethren there to sing songs and to pray and to just really create the environment to make it conducive for a healthy
Yep.
delivery. You know, I think, again, back to the understanding of who you are.
And you know what is very important? When that mother delivered that baby, sometimes, as Sophie said, she passed out. To make sure after the nurse take that baby away and tidy that baby, that is a sad baby that came back to the mother. Because certain lots of time you made that mistake, wrong baby come back.
No,
Right? That's true.
I've
Seen that in the
happens.
news, yeah.
It happens.
I've seen it in the news, yeah, I know
That's
that.
actually, you know, I'll give you an experience during an emergency C-section, your child is taken away. You don't see that child for 12, 24 hours. Somebody's got to be with that child. Somebody
Yeah.
has to be with that
I
child.
mean-
You don't see that child.
You
You're waiting, well, half the time you're knocked out, but you don't see the child for 12 to 24 hours.
Yeah, I met a patient, and that's what happened to his dad. They were twins, and the mother get the wrong baby back.
Oh,
Yep, and they didn't find out till years after. And the other twin don't want to know, don't want to meet the right twin because he's so upset. But his children met their uncle.
But it's so funny, it just even goes back
Yep.
right to Moses when he was in the basket.
Yeah.
He had watch, his sister watched
he's
him.
watching the
That's
sidelines.
right.
Yeah.
You better not lose sight of that baby,
Mhm.
you know? That's a serious
It's very
thing.
important.
I remember we used to run in the hospital. I remember because the mother's in the room in the bed. Oh my! We were back in the days. We used to run with the nurses when they're weaning the baby out because sometimes you're sleeping, you don't know anything that's happening, and you know, as the doulas or someone else that you're bringing in the hospital, they have to be sitting there, eyes on that child at all times because you're not capable of doing that at that time. You really is not capable. You're running down the hallway with the child to make sure you're trying to peek. Okay. You're tagging there's so many things you're looking at. And again, this is the stock of Abraham. Abraham's seed. This is who we're raising. These children that are sitting here, I mean, they don't even know their importance. We don't know what tomorrow brings for them, but we got to start them out on the right path. And we're not talking about just the school system. We're talking about our Israelite culture. We're talking about from the home. We're talking about as women. Give thanks that there's single mothers that came in and they took on the culture of Israel. They circumcised their children. They weaned them. They do what they have to do. But I was telling my husband that when I came into the nation, everything that I've known before was just a single parent. I wasn't raised in the, two-parent home. But in the Israelite nation, I've seen the most mother and father that when you go to the school system, they look at you and they told us, wow. Both parents are here. You don't get it. So in here, we are starting. We're going back to our roots. Two-parent home. Make sure the man is a man. Make sure the woman is a woman. Know your role. Know your role. Know how you're supposed to be raising our children. Coming back for 40 days or 80 days. Where did Elder get all these things from? Because you were just told sometimes. Okay, you have the child. Okay, if you have a boy, okay, you're away for 40 days. Okay, you have a girl, but where did this come from to go into elders? Like, where did he get it from to teach us? Like, you guys ever sit and think about that? Like, we're mothers, but it's not going to the fathers. It's going into the mother's mind. You're the one with the child. You're the one that's supposed to be reading. Yes, we know the fathers are there.
First teacher.
But the first teacher is the mother. So even if we go to Leviticus 12, then you will see even where the separation comes in with the 40 and the 80 days. And when you're reading it, you'll see certain things that, wow, okay, the child has to be returned to the temple. The child has to present themselves to God. Why do we do at 7 years, we bring them back? We bring them back here to present themselves because some of them are not born here in Toronto, Canada, where the head office is. But they have to be presented. It's not that the God of Israel is not seen, doesn't know them by name. But they want to come back to the temple. And again, it's about that. It's the temple.
You look at the sacrifice that you look at the sacrifice that Hannah made.
Yes.
Her child, her firstborn child that she cried for, and she prayed, and her husband's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry. I'll give you twice as much. I'll give you 7 times as much as all my other wives, whatever." But she cried. To her, this was the only thing she wanted: a son. She wanted a son. And what does she do? This is how much her child meant to her. She wanted a son so that she can present him back. His name meant a gift. You know, Samuel, he came out of all of her despair, and then she presents him back after weaning him, of course.
After weaning him.
But to me, that's deep. You know, to even say, you know, God of Israel, look what you gave me. Thank you so much. You know, I'm so honored to have this child. Thank you. You know, for that child to.
She gave him back, and then he ended up serving the people.
There you
I'm
go.
telling you, that to me it's huge. It's huge. This is what it meant to have an Israelite child, to offer up an Israelite child to the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, after the traditions of our forefathers. To go and say thank you, God of Abraham. Say thank you. You know, you dress him up and you present him and you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is, and you really do, as Israelite women. I know we say it, but we have to believe it. We really have to stay connected to the truth, because it's the only strength that we have to raise these children. It is the only thing that we have to raise our children. It really is. Remove this culture from us. What do we have? What connected us? It is this culture, because all of us, different walks of life, we have a piece here, this way, this, you know, Trinidad, yeah, I remember that, but it was called this. Okay, Barbados, I remember that, but it was called, down to the fruits. But what connects us? What connects us as a people? What connects us as women to say, okay, it all started here? And this is what we're discussing today. It's our Israelite culture, is what we need to know as Israelite women. That's what makes us happy. That's what makes us strong. That's what makes us, when we're singing our song to the God of Israel, remembering that, oh God of Israel, I couldn't have a child because a lot of them was barren. I couldn't. But God of Israel, thank you. Know, Hannah, I'm giving him back. You know, I got to keep my words because you kept your words. God of Israel, this is what we have to do. We got to take pride in our God. We got to, you know, thank him all the time, because our children are here and they're well. You know what I mean? This, I don't know how much more to say it, but when I think about it, this is why I'm connected. This is why I'm grounded. Because you really do, when you see it, you should stand tall. I said, hey, that's me there. That's what I did. You know what I mean? That's, hey, I did that. I did all that. It's there in the Bible, because it wasn't there before.
We look at our children today, they are struggling out there. They are struggling. And, you know, every day, I can't imagine you're living every day wondering if your child's going to come back home through those doors. It's like, you should not have to live that way. As a mother, you should not. Especially when you're raising boys, you're raising black boys this day and age. You need to start thinking differently, because whatever people are thinking right now, for some reason, it's not working. It is not working. We have to have a different mindset to raise them to be strong and independent and confident.
And that goes back to the whole strategy again, right?
Yep.
In today's, you have to come up, you have to adapt, because there's some things that are beyond your control. Whatever's happening in school with sex education and transgender and whatnot, you have to go into a planning mode, and again, back to conversations of how to really teach your child to say, this is not acceptable. You know, experimenting is not acceptable because of the laws of our God, from our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Like, to really understand that, to know, touching back on Samuel, to know that you're supposed to grow up and serve the people. You have the ability to do that. You have the ability to be perfect. You have the ability to be like Abraham. And it's up to the mother to instill that into the child, the parents really, to say you can grow up and, okay, we're not going to go out there with spears and swords, but you may become a midwife, you may become an inventor. We had so many inventions that women and men have contributed to society. You can grow up and add to the Israelite nation. And it's your duty and your goal to say, what will I do to add to that?
So true, and that's where you get even most of our culture. Like we're discussing, yes, we're discussing circumcision, and we're speaking about weaning and all these things, but think of her feast. You know what I mean? Think about her feast days, you know what I mean? That's all a part of us. That's all a part of our culture. Not just, that's the foundation, is what you start out with, is the circumcision and the weaning. and you're having their haircut at this time, and you're having their separation for women. But until I started reading in depth, I didn't even understand even how the separation worked. Of why did you say 80 days? Why did you say 40 days? Like everything, it's so detailed. So detailed. And even if you get a special child, Samson, there was even detail on how to raise him. And the reason why today that we don't even give our children from a certain age, even as a mother, we don't take in anything from the vine or any, wine, any strong drink, because we don't know what's in our womb. We don't know what the child is going to come out and be.
And then again, you see the examples right here. Where did you get it from? Oh,
It's there.
Samson's mother. I mean, the instructions were given to her. I mean, we don't know. We're not hearing angels.
No.
So we're not hearing that, but we don't know what we're carrying. We don't know if our child will be the next person to lead. We don't know. We don't know. And that's the beauty of it. You don't know, but you can be prepared. You can be prepared.
Prepared.
And I'm telling you now, if you prepare yourself, you're going to get something. You're going to get something good. Right? Reach for the stars. You're going to get something in between. You're going to get something good. So you've got to prepare yourself. So this is what we're doing. Very simple, You just don't know. You treat them as though they are going to be that great person.
That is so true.
So what Officer Charmaine, you were saying how our children are struggling out there. Absolutely they are. And by now, I think we all, like adults, know that the systems out there are designed for our children to fail. So if you are going to leave your children,
you can't use that as an excuse.
No, but what I'm saying is if as a parent you're going to leave your children to be taught at school and to learn from the streets, if you don't do your part, they're going to fail because you're actually teaching contrary to what's out there.
Exactly.
So it has to be, they have to learn at home. There's no other
They
way or
have
else they're
to.
going to fail.
They have to. But the beauty of having the Israelite nation is that you can bring your children here, you can bring your family here, and then we can all learn together. Sometimes it's difficult. Because everybody's got a job, mom and dad's working. The TV's looking after your children. It's a hectic, chaotic world. It is, right? So here, you separate yourself from all of that. You separate yourself from your TV, from your laptop, your iPads, everything. All the contraband remains outside, right? And you're here. And what are you doing? You're learning how to bond, how to connect, how to be a family.
Yeah, and that's the key point, because just like how the streets and the system and everybody's raising, it takes you back to the village and the nation.
Yes.
If one can't do it, you gotta, and mom's away work and dad's away work, like you gotta get a collective group to say, hey, help me nurture this child. Because they are inundated by the internet. I don't even say television anymore, because young people don't watch TV. The internet, their friends, peer pressure.
Cell phones.
And the system is designed to
So
happen.
this is perfect. So you bring them here, bring them here.
Oh, Jacob. Go, Jacob.
There's a lot of, we're understanding the role of the woman when it comes to their child and their family and the household. But what do you think is the role, like in the nation, in the church? Like, what is the woman's role amongst the people? Like, we're talking a lot about like the children and raising the children. So something like you even see the separation that women bow their heads. Like, what's the purpose? Like, why do we bow your heads and the men don't? Right? So I just want to touch a little bit on that. Like, what's the purpose of, or what role should the woman play when it comes to the nation? So it's kind of bringing it another direction, but I just.
It follows on.
It's in there. It's still in the same topic that we were discussing, but again, as women, because we have children, once you talk about our children, the hands are going to go up, and we do have those type of topics also to cover. So even talking about we're sitting here and our heads is covered and why the men's head is not covered, we could also go into 1 Corinthians to discuss even that. But I wanted to first just to end off the children part, to tie into, because I know a lot of us don't know the reason between the 40 and the 80 days. So and clean and unclean. So even if we go to Leviticus 12, we're just going to read it. We're not going to discuss it, and then we go into the head covering. And someone else could read it. So we all feel together, one. Who would like to read? Oh, not verse. Oh, start from verse 1. Yeah.
And Leviticus 12.
Yeah, it's loud.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, If a woman have conceived seed and born a man child, she shall be unclean 7 days, according to the days of the separation of her infirmity shall she be unclean. In the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. And she shall then continue in the blood of her purifying 30 days. She shall touch no hallowed thing, nor come into the sanctuary, until the days of her purifying be fulfilled. But if she bear a maid child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks, as in her separation. And she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 6 days. And when the days of her purifying are fulfilled, for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering, unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and unto the priest.
Okay, we could stop there. So, did you guys notice a few things in this, just reading this scripture? There's one thing that jumped out at me, and it was maid. Today, when you say maid, what do you think about? But then when I was reading this, I'm like, oh, because in my mind I'm thinking, okay, young child, you know what I mean, young girl. No, it's the maid. And then we get the difference with back in the days it was a maid and then it was a maiden. So when they're born, they're referred to as maid. But today, try that. Somebody's coming to clean your home. So again, this is again part of our culture that is not even there today. But it does belong to us. And again, you see the separation where they have to be brought even to the temple. They're not just, you have them and that's it. You go on with life. They still have to be presented and something has to happen. The priests have to do something. And you have it here in the Israelite nation. After the time, we do come in, you know, where the brethren, they greet us and they're happy and they sing songs. We do have the culture here. It's not just written. We are following it. Elder Val?
I just want to add something. Do you guys believe in for when a woman in the nation have a baby, that the baby should be separated, like sleeping in one room away from the parents?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
No, I said, do you guys believe that in the nation here as a woman? Well, I don't know how many of you guys do it, but like when you have a baby, you separate the baby from yourself, like having the baby sleeping in a different room or by itself.
She may like if the baby have their own room, away from the parents' room.
It
That
depends on your
person.
situation. I mean, if you're a mother and you're going to be waking up every 2 hours or so to feed your child, your newborn, it might be easier to have your baby around. It really depends on your situation. Yeah.
No, because
But-
the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I know personally, because that the word of baby also, because when the child is born, that child is moving. And so putting that baby in another room away from you, because even back then, even with my parents and my mother, that's what they used to do. When they have the baby is right there.
Right, well, as I said, you've got a newborn, you're going to be feeding them every 2 hours, and most mothers are not going to be walking to no other room to pick up their child. They'll probably be there with their child for the most part.
Nowadays, the society, that's how they do it. The woman have their baby, and the baby is in another room, and away from the mother. Because you look at it, I mean, this is just nature itself. Because you look at animals. Right, animals, they have their baby, they don't do that, you know, they cuddle them, they're there because that's the purpose of a mother to do that instead of separating your child. So I think it's very important here for these young women. Rachel is having a baby right now, about having a baby, and she should know all these things too.
Right, well, like I said before, this is why we have this forum, to share these ideas, to nurture these ideas, and to make sure that everybody really understands the importance of having children.
As a man, when I have with my children, I used to do that to my girls. You know, sometimes
Yep.
when the mother is too tired, I have them and I have them right now in my arms, and because of that, the child
Bonded.
will
Okay.
come more attached to you because this is how you raise them.
It's
you know?
definitely
So
important.
it's
Right.
important.
Okay, so I was gonna say, we'll just have one more comment from,
Before Paul.
Oh.
No, I just
Okay.
actually wanted to go back before Frisando and Paul to Jacob, because you were
Right.
talking about
But this
the
is-
mother and the children all the time. It's in 2016 and throughout our history, women have always supported the nation and the family as a whole, right? Whether it was Huldah, Deborah, Anna, they were prophetess, they did things for the nation. Right? Throughout our history, we had Patricia Bath that invented the laser probe for the eye, or Mildred Kinner that did like the invention for the toilet paper roll or the walker. Women have invented, they have contributed to society. In your workplace, I can speak for myself, a lot of these industries are male dominated. And it's up to you as an Israelite woman to say, okay, how am I gonna walk in there and be upright, have integrity, and when they look upon me, have favor upon me, they're not gonna know it's because I serve an awesome God and I come from a great family.
Right.
So you are an Israelite from your church, and you share that wherever you go in the world. So wherever you go, your light shines, and people just don't understand it. They can't comprehend it. But within our family structure, we totally get it amongst each other.
and even another point that he touched on, which I think is very important, he mentioned, why do women cover their heads? Now this actually leads off from the whole birthing scenarios to the next point, which is based on clean and unclean. This is a very, very, very important point for us as Israelites, because this is where we start to implement real separation. This is what makes us different from all the other nations. We understand that there is a separation when it comes to, there's children here, cycle. A woman goes through a cycle.
Cycle.
A child, so a young child around the age
culture.
of, nowadays, what is it? 9, 10,
10,
11,
any age,
12. Any time throughout that moment, they go through a cycle. They go through a cycle where they bleed. Okay? This is unclean. This is unclean. Blood is unclean. And we have to make that separation. And for being here, we understand that everybody could be at any stage, and to be unclean, sometimes it's a sensitive subject. You don't want to be talking to, oh, by the way, are you this is why we wear our head ties. We don't want to have to invade other people's privacy if that's what they feel. So we ask, if you are clean, please put your head ties on. If you are not, then do not wear one. Because there are things that we need to do. There may be things that we need to do. And we need to make sure that we're not coming into contact with somebody that's unclean. But this goes back to the separation from the time of a child is born, where they are separated, the mother is unclean at that time. So she's got to separate herself. Back in the days, they may have had tents or a different area, separate rooms, where they would go for that period, for 80 days even. They would have gone and separated themselves and had a room to themselves for 80 days. We have a lot of people coming into the nation. A lot of new people coming into the nation. I remember when I first came in, it was very specific. You would remove your earrings. First and foremost, your earrings go. Whether you're clean or unclean, they go. Oh, am I looking at you? Sorry. So you would remove your earrings, then you would head straight to the washroom. You will wash your hands, okay, and then you put your head tie on, if you're clean. That's the first thing you do. You don't mingle, you don't linger, you go straight to the washroom, you wash your hands, you put your head tie on. This is the first indication that you are clean, you're good, so when you come back through, you can hug other people that have their head ties on as well, okay? This is the first thing that we do. And some people may not like it. They may think, oh my gosh, my hair, and I just had it done. But this is what we do to define us as a culture. This is what separates us from everybody else. We base our scriptures on clean and unclean, separation. From the very get-go, as Sophie mentioned, there was circumcision, there was a separation. Everything we do is to define who we are, to make us who we are. So to put your head tie on is respect, is to say, by the way, I am okay, you can hug me. Or, by the way, back off if you've got anything to do. Right? This is what it means. And it's respect. You come into here, you're respecting your teachers, you're respecting your elders, you're respecting your priests, you're respecting each other. Right? First thing, we deny these things, we push them aside because we get caught up in things that are irrelevant. But this is important for our culture. It's very relevant for who we are, and that's why we do it.
I think we do need a part two, because when you're dealing with women and our culture, it is a lot, because we have so much culture, we have so much Israelite culture. So when we sit down and we talk, all hands is going to go up, because there's so many things that we remember, there's so many things that we do today that maybe we don't do it every day, but when we talk about it, we start doing it again. Like as Officer Charmin mentioned, even just to walk in and wash your hands before touching your Bible, these were the basics. These were the basics, but we don't do those things anymore sometimes because we don't talk about it. And I remember speaking to my husband, he's always saying, the same way the God of Israel repeats, remember Egypt, is the same way we're supposed to be doing these things. Repeat it all the time, repetition. That way we don't forget it. Repetition all the time. That's what we have to be doing with everything, how we raise our children, our feast days, because that's what keeps you grounded.
Does any, just even going back, I just want to make sure that we all were clear, what does it mean to be unclean?
You want to read it? Or we?
Yeah.
It's going to be long.
No, it's not anything, yeah.
Okay, so if you want to know about more even on being unclean, you could even read Leviticus chapter 18, read the whole thing. It goes into more details on clean and unclean. If you want to read even more about just even Samson himself and just the detail the God of Israel gave to his mother of how to raise him, you could read it too. You could go into Judges and, read it on. Judges 13, read on. We're not going to read everything because there's a lot of substance that we did bring to the table today, but the time doesn't allocate for us to go through everything. So we are going to be going into what even Jacob wanted to find out. And I think even today, we as Israelite women, we need to be examples. You know what I mean? We need to be examples. Not just we come in and, the head is tied, but we also need to look after our children. Not just raise them, but our children are all over. We're caretakers. The men, they come in, they do what they need to do, but we prepare them. Our home is here also. It's not just when we leave, we go home and we have all these things that we do in the home. We should do it here at the Israelite Nation. That is our role as Israelite women. This is our home. So if we go to 1 Corinthians. Oh, Michelle, sorry. Go, Michelle.
I was really happy that Jacob brought that up about outside of being a mom and stuff, like what your role is. Because I'm not looking like to do that right now, but as a young person, like being outside, looking after your career, I've been thinking a lot of lately about what it is that I can bring to the nation and being an example in the workforce, and just like the thing about the light just being on you. And a lot of people, like, you can get both sides. Like, some people, celebrate you and say, I'm not supposed to say that. A lot of people celebrate you and say, oh, wow, they're proud of you, but there's also like the part that there's, you have haters, you have people that look at you like, how come, she's always doing so well, and how come? But it's almost like, it's just really good, but I've been thinking a lot about that, a lot about myself. A lot about my success and what it is that I can do, how I can better myself and be an example. Because of course, yes, not time to judge for now, but there are girls that are always looking at me, always like coming to me. There's people that will come to me like, oh, Michelle, like I didn't really like what you did because I look up to you, So I'm realizing there are eyes on me, so I have to really be careful of what I say, how I dress, what I do in the nation, because there's little girls that come up to me and look at me, right? So it's just funny. Like I've been thinking about this for the past week. Well said. Thank you. I was thinking once, I really feel like I had to say it because I was thinking about it before, but I didn't want to jump in, and then Jacob brought it up, so I was like, okay, because I was really thinking about, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? You know, what am I
Sometimes it's not
doing?
about what you're physically giving or doing with your hands, it's just living your life the way you should in the Israelite lifestyle. And as the younger generation is watching, I think that is scary.
Okay, so could we get another reader? Nice and loud. We're gonna go to 1 Corinthians chapter 11. And this is in regards to Jacob's question, in regards to the head covering. Because it's not just coming in and you cover your head and you wash your hands. What's behind it? Again, most of the homes that we were raised in, the women's head were covered. I remember just, doesn't matter if they were cleaning, whatever they're doing, but the head is always covered. So what makes it so different in the Israelite nation? And I think that's a good question, because even as the young people, the young girls, it's something that I don't even believe that they all know. Why do they cover their head? And it's not just because they became a young lady, there's more also to it. Yeah. So, just show of hands, who believe that we should have a part 2? Because there's so much that's going to come from even.
Of course.
Yeah.
Nice.
This is good.